Hello and welcome. I'm Michelle Anderson from Clarinet Mentors. Today I'd like to share with you what I think are some of the very most important things to do when you warm up on your musical instrument, and how you can turn your warm-up into one of the most powerful tools to help you improve your skills on your instrument. Now, although I'm focusing on the clarinet today, these concepts actually apply to any musical instrument that you play. I know many of you who watch these videos play a variety of instruments, and so I'd like you to also think about how you might apply these to the other instruments that you're working on in your life. Now, I've watched a lot of people pull their instrument out of the case, set it up, and warm up. And I would like you to evaluate the quality of your warm-up. The mark that I would give most people, not so good. And the reason is that some people don't even really have a thoughtful warm-up at all. They put their reed on, they get set up, and they play some random warm-up that's probably a habit that they may do every time they play. And the whole thing is probably about 10 seconds long. Do-do-do-do-do, I'm ready to play. I play some random notes, although I might play the same notes every time I play. Okay, I'm warmed up. Now I start the hardest piece of music in my repertoire. Now, was that a good warm-up? Yeah, not really. I did establish that my reed is working well enough that I'd go on to the next piece, so I do get some marks for that. But I wasn't thoughtful about it. And if I was using bad habits, maybe my fingers were too hammery or my air wasn't very strong and steady, I'm going to carry that right over into the next piece that I play. So I would like to encourage you to have a more thoughtful, purposeful warm-up, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. I want to take a moment to think about the most important part of our body that needs warming up to have a really effective warm-up that's going to help you improve more quickly. So what do we need to warm up? Let's say we're playing the clarinet. Well, our fingers. Good idea to warm up our fingers. We use them a lot. In any wind instrument, we're using our mouth muscles, our embouchure muscles. Those are good to warm up. Of course, our blowing and breathing muscles are very important, so we want to warm them up. But there's another part of our body that's even more important. Do you know what I'm thinking about? Yep, our gray matter, our brain. The approach that we take, the thoughtfulness we put into it, has a huge impact on our results. Almost all of our problems come from bad habits that we've trained ourselves to do. And the best way to improve is to identify those bad habits and find a way to systematically change them into better habits. And then the playing is easier, we have more fun, we get to play the music we like. Your warm-up can be a tool that helps you improve faster than almost anything else that you do. So I want to give you some warm-up pointers that help our brain to get on the right track to help us play better. I believe that there are many parts of our brain that we use when we play clarinet, and there are lots of scientific studies that support this. What I've really noticed when I've watched people improve their skills and set about to make the instrument feel easier and have more fun is that we can send messages to some of the subconscious parts of our brains that there are certain things we want to improve in. And if we can trigger those parts of the brain to do the work for us, it's almost like that improvement starts to happen magically. Now, of course, it's not magically. It's that we've done some exercises that stimulate those parts of the brain, and we're kind of sending them the message, I want my fingers to do this instead of what they were doing, or my air to do this. And we do it very consciously for a couple minutes, and that will keep working behind the scenes as you put your conscious focus into something else. So the warm-up is a perfect time for you to take an area or two of your playing that you want to improve and very consciously send a message to those unconscious parts of the brain that this is what we want to do. So if I have an unconscious warm-up, where I'm just randomly playing stuff, I'm kind of sending the message to my brain that it doesn't really matter if I'm thinking about fingers or air or whatever. Yeah, I just want to get to the good stuff. And you can play that way, but you're not going to improve very quickly. So let's take an example of some things you can do to do a more conscious warm-up. It doesn't have to be long. Now, in some cases, for my more serious students, I recommend about a third of their practice time be warm-up. So if they're going to practice half an hour, they do 10 minutes of conscious warm-up exercises. An hour, 20 minutes. You don't have to use that ratio. If you're really attentive and conscious, even a 5-minute warm-up every day that's very thoughtful is going to improve your playing quite a bit. So some of this will now be more clarinet specific. I think on the clarinet, the thing that most people don't do as well as they could is blow with fast, steady air, especially when they get to softer dynamics. So I always like to start the warm-up process with some kind of long tone. Now, I do have other videos here on YouTube that get into the proper way of playing long tones in much more detail, so I'm going to give you a mini lesson today, and if you want more info, search out those long tones videos. But basically, a long tone is taking one note and playing it for a long time. And the way to make it an effective warm-up for clarinet is to take that note and see how softly you can play it with good tone. What happens for all of us is we get to a certain soft point and our tone starts to get airy and fuzzy. That's the nature of the instrument. As soon as we hear that airy, hissy, fuzzy sound, it means we've got some air going into the clarinet that's not vibrating the reed. And as we get softer, of course, we're turning down the volume of air. It's like if we had a water faucet, and instead it's like an air faucet built into our body. As we have less air flowing through the instrument, there's less stuff to get the reed going. That means we need to take that smaller amount of air and move it even faster. Very similar to if I had a hose and I was washing something and someone came along and turned down the faucet and suddenly I had half as much water, I could turn my spray valve to adjust the spray faster so it still had a lot of impact. That's what we do with our air. So your goal in a long tone is to be very mindful. You could start with an open G. We all know how to play open G. As long as you've put a clarinet in your mouth and gotten a note, that's the G where all the holes are open. So it's just the note we play automatically. So what I recommend is we start loud and clear and gradually get softer. And what you'll hear is a point at which you start to hear, I'm going to exaggerate it so it might even come through your computer, kind of an airy, fuzzy sound. So there I have some pitch of that G, but I also have a lot of and we want to get rid of that. So the idea is as soon as you start to hear that hiss, you speed your air up to get rid of that and get a clearer sound. Sometimes we temporarily get louder when we do this, but the idea is we just keep adjusting it and challenging ourselves to get softer and softer. I would typically play one note for about a minute to a minute and a half and get it as soft as I can, and as I warm up, it gets easier and easier to get soft. So a mini version would look something like this. And here's my imaginary spray valve. I'm going to let my tone fuzz out as I use less air, and then I'm going to adjust my blowing muscles to speed up the small amount of air so that I get rid of some of that fuzz. Usually when we play loudly, it's easy to play clear. So you can hear my sound's dropping out, it's getting fuzzier as I use less air, and then I speed it up. And clarinet can go very, very soft. Our goal is to go quite soft. Start with open G. Now, the higher we go, the more challenging it is to get the notes soft and clear. So do challenge yourself and play notes that you're comfortable playing. If you're a beginner on clarinet, open G is a great place to start. Just do that. If you're more advanced, I would go an octave higher. Do it on a high G. You're going to find this note wimps out sooner. And then do it on a high C, super reactive note. If you're a more advanced player, then I give you the ultimate long tone challenge. Thumb and first finger. First two fingers on your left hand, and then leave this hole off, these two fingers. You'll see I've used this fingering in other videos as well. This is a really volatile note. It doesn't like to play well, but if you can play this note softly, oh, you got a great warm-up and you're really getting your air to do what you want it to. Now this note likes to crack when you get down to a softer level. It sounds like a high G sharp. What you can do if it starts to crack, by cracking I mean you'll get an undertone. Here I'm kind of getting a low sound. You can start huffing your air in little huffs. And that trains our air to move really fast. And make those little huffs gradually softer and softer. And then once I'm huffing softly, I can gradually lengthen those huffs until I'm actually sustaining the note softly. And now I'm playing that volatile fingering quite softly. I really feel it right here, which are the muscles that I want to warm up for blowing and breathing. So this is a very mindful warm-up because I'm really paying attention to what my air is doing. And as soon as my air gets in the bad habit of moving too slowly for the reed to vibrate well, I'm correcting it. It doesn't work as well if you're just kind of playing a soft, fuzzy, airy note, because then you're reinforcing your bad habits. So if you do this, be very mindful, pay attention. I usually will play 2 or 3 or 4 different long tones, depending on how much time you want to spend. That could be 3 or 4 minutes of your warm-up. Even if that's all you did and then you went into your normal stuff, you're going to notice an improvement in your playing. So I really recommend you try that. For the next part of your warm-up, I recommend taking one more aspect of your playing and give yourself an exercise where all of your attention is on that particular thing. Now here's where you get to pick. It might be that you've been playing a piece of music and you notice that maybe crossing the break from A to B, just not working so well. So you might want to create a finger exercise. And again, I have lots of videos that show you different kind of things you can do, but let's just take that as an example. If I was focusing on fingers, I would look in the mirror where I can see my fingers. I'd make sure they're arched and relaxed and not moving very much. And I would just play those 2 notes. Right now I'm just fingering them back and forth. And I would look at my hands. And if I see they're moving a lot, I'm going to rein them in and get them moving less. And that's all I'm going to do, just back and forth. So I'll start with them not so good, and then I'll improve them, and you'll see how I might do this. And again, this is assuming I'm watching myself in a computer screen or a mirror, so I can see the bad habit. So you can see I sort of went from flying fingers to not so flying fingers, and it got better and better as I went, and it felt easier to play. That might be it for your finger warm-up. Or pick a couple different intervals. You create them, but the idea is we be really thoughtful. So the messages I'm sending to my unconscious brain there is I want my fingers arched, and I want them to stay close to the holes, and I don't want them to slap. So I'm very, very consciously and deliberately moving my fingers in a way that I might not do most of the time. I find if people do that for a couple minutes, it does send the message to the part of our brain that controls our fingers that that's the direction we want to head. And even when you go into your other music where you're totally concentrating on the written page and not so much what your fingers are doing, they're going to be improving. Other examples of things you could do, perhaps tonguing is an issue. So you might want to take a simple little tonguing exercise. And again, I'll put a link here to my playlists that sort of list all the videos that I have on YouTube, and you can pick a tonguing exercise if that's something that applies to you at this time. But I might do a simple scale where I'm doing a long note and 4 short notes just to get my tongue warmed up. And I might go through the whole range of the instrument that way. So I'm thinking about keeping my air even and my tonguing crisp and short. Just something like that. After that, it's always a great idea to learn some finger patterns that will help you out, or some rhythm patterns. Perhaps rhythm's what you want to work on. I believe that there's part of our brain that kind of learns rhythms, and once we learn them, we don't have to consciously think about those things anymore. They come out very easily. Most of you, your first 5 notes in clarinet were probably G, F, E, D, C. And even a total beginner, after about 2 weeks of playing, they can play those notes up and down without really thinking hard about it at all. When you first learn a new note, it takes a lot of concentration to remember where to put your fingers, and then it kind of goes into autopilot mode. Well, there are so many finger patterns on clarinet that are commonly found in music that the more finger patterns we can put into that autopilot part of our brain, the better our sight reading is going to be and the better our technique is. So that's where scales and thirds, do, 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 arpeggios, all of those kind of things, that's where those are valuable to play. And there you might want to have an exercise book that has these things written out. And again, each day just pick 1 or 2 and play them really well. And the idea is to get out of reading them in the book, but almost have it by memory. So it'd be better to take just 2 measures, play them 10 times in a row until you feel like you're almost on autopilot, and then carry on from there. All of this is warming up our brain. Of course, we're also looking at fingers or tongue or air support, But the more important thing is that we're really concentrating and we're really being focused. And again, we're sending the message to our brain that we want to improve these habits and do better. And it's very powerful. And this is a thing that most people leave out of their practice routine. And I notice a huge difference in my students who have an organized warm-up and those that don't. So if this seems a bit new to you, just do a mini version. Pick one long tone, pick one finger exercise, maybe one tonguing exercise. That whole thing might only take you 3 or 4 minutes. Try it for about 2 weeks and see if you notice an improvement in your other things. I believe it will transfer through and it could be a really powerful tool for you. Now there's room for comments in the comments box under this video, and I would love to hear from you. There are so many great warm-ups out there. Again, I'm just giving you guidelines and suggestions, but if you have some warm-up tricks and tips that you love, please share them with the whole community by putting your comments in the video below. I'd also like to invite you to join my Clarinet Mentors community. It's absolutely free. If you become a member, I send out a newsletter every couple of weeks that would have an educational video, like the one you're watching now. Also, my recommendations for interesting clarinet things. It might be equipment, it might be music, anything I think that would be of interest to clarinet players such as yourself. You can join by going to www.learnclarinetnow.com. It's free to join. You can unjoin at any time if it's not a good fit for you, but I invite you to join in and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for watching today's video.